Welcome to Hades. I know that Hades has been played a lot here on YouTube, but I'm going to play this because I want to talk about a fairly basic Psychology 101 level concept of operant conditioning and how it relates to games like this, roguelikes and roguelites, and how Hades has become the phenomenon that it's become, and I think it has to do with the principles of operant conditioning. And so I'm going to get in, I'm going to start a new save. Specifically, I'm going to clear out this save slot so that I can start a completely new save. Red Fighter, I'm not going to turn the game volume up because for the same reason that I usually don't, so that my voice can be heard as I am playing the game. The only thing I'm going to have is the voice volume up because I'm going to be talking while I'm playing, and I don't want...
Few tales are told of Hades.
Sorry.
Whose very name inspires fear and penitence, reminding us of the inevitable fate which we all share. I, however, mean to tell you such a tale. Listen carefully.
Goodbye, Father.
I don't want the music and sound effects to overpower me as I'm talking.
To hell with this place.
Because I want to be able to talk while I'm playing this game, which is going to make me worse at this game, as is the fact that I am starting from the beginning and have not played this game from the beginning in quite some time. So do not expect me to be good at this game. I have gotten used to quite a few powers within this game. But I do want to talk about the principles of operant conditioning. I'm going to get started right from the beginning.
Try and stop me.
So operant conditioning is what we often think of as learning, and it's one of the most common principles of learning to be talked about in pop culture, and actually to be used within pop culture. So if you hear people talking about B.F. Skinner and the sorts of things that he did, or if you've ever trained a dog to do anything. So you want to train your dog to roll over, you've used the principles of operant conditioning. If you've ever trained a child in potty training, you've probably used the principles of operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is one of the most commonly used psychological principles without actually knowing the terms and without fully understanding what we're doing. We just intuitively understand the principles of operant conditioning. So pardon me for just a sec, we're going to have some talking going on in the game, and I'll come back and talk about that some more.
It's got to be her. Then here goes nothing. In the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message.
Hail, noble cousin. Now, let's get you from that miserable place. I'll see that all of us upon Olympus do our part, beginning here with me.
So for those of you who haven't played this game, you defeat some rooms, and then you end up with some powers at the end of defeating those rooms. That, in and of itself, is operant conditioning, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. I am going to select one of these powers, and I think I want this one.
I know you
So now my dash has a little bit of deflect to it and some damage to it, and I dash around a lot, and so I'm going to keep that. So what operant conditioning is at its core is learning based on the oops, ouch. Forgot about the spikies. Learning based on the consequences of an action. What happens after you do a given behavior. And specifically, it's a behavior that's a voluntary behavior, something that you can control. If the behavior is something that you don't control, a reflex behavior, then you're talking about classical conditioning. That's Pavlov's dogs. If you've ever heard of the experiment where the researcher got the dogs to salivate to the sound of the bell, that is classical conditioning. Whereas this is engaging in some sort of behavior that you can choose whether or not to engage in that behavior, and then the consequences of that behavior, what happens after those behaviors, whether what happens after is good or bad, is pleasurable or not, will determine whether or not you choose to engage in that behavior. Ow. Again, please do not expect me to be very good. At this point, it has been a long time since I've started this game without my usual powers.
Lady Athena, in the name of Hades,
Let's get a shield. Let's get one of those rare ones. The fact that it says rare makes me like it more, even if it's not actually better. This is known as the principle of rarity. And we tend to think that things are rare, are more valuable than things that are common or things that are less rare. So when someone says limited time only, we tend to be willing to pay more money for limited time only things, even if they aren't as good as why people like the McRib sandwich, even if it doesn't taste as good. So back to operant conditioning. So that voluntary behavior, the one that you're trying to change the frequency of, it's called an operant. This is why it is called operant conditioning, because you are changing the frequency of an operant, a random voluntary behavior that you can choose to engage in or you can choose not to engage in. And so what you do is you first identify, if you're talking about operant conditioning, you have to identify what is the operant, what is the behavior that is changing in frequency, or at least that you're trying to change in frequency. Then you have to look at what's the consequence, what's the thing that's happening after that behavior. And those consequences can have two basic flavors. They can be pleasurable consequences, that is, consequences that we generally want to have happen, or they can be unpleasurable consequences, those sorts of things that we generally don't want to have happen. And pardon me again, I need to speak to this goddess.
There's only one heavenly archer I know of. Well, several, really. Anyway, in the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message.
I've heard about you. Look, I'm not like all the others on Olympus. The power of the hunt helps keep me company, so maybe it'll help you too.
Most excellent. Oh yeah, I've been forgetting to use my cast, haven't I? Here's that rare one again. Let's do this one. That's what I've been remembering to use. Ah yes, let's go with you. I remember what this is. Ooh. Do not get blown up. Do not get blown up. That is an unfavorable consequence. So again, we've got our consequences that are generally favorable, and we have our consequences that are generally not favorable. And obviously, we want favorable consequences to happen more frequently. We want unfavorable consequences to happen less frequently. And so we are motivated to stop engaging in behaviors, to engage in them less frequently when they lead to unfavorable consequences, and to engage in them more frequently when they engage in favorable consequences. And that's the basics of operant conditioning. When an operant, a random voluntary behavior, leads to favorable consequences, we're going to engage in it more frequently. It's going to increase in frequency. And when it leads to unfavorable consequences, or what we call aversive consequences, aversive consequences are ones that we don't like, that are unfavorable or unpleasant. So when it leads to aversive consequences, we'll engage in them less frequently. I'm about to get a favorable consequence, a boon, something great from this god.
This one was bound to show up, I guess. In the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message.
You've got quite the fighting spirit in you there, I have to say. Most intriguing, and yet no surprise for someone born in hell itself. You come on out of there and tell me all about it. I'm a fellow student of death, you see.
Alright, we're gonna have to start using our special some more. Our special looks like this.
Lord Ares,
Boom.
maybe I'll get out of here yet.
Boom. Let's start remembering to do that. Boom. Really, I need to heal. I'm going to die soon. Because... I don't want to die. Can I speak to your superiors? Because I don't want to die. Pardon me for just 1 second. I'm dying. A very unfavorable consequence indeed. So now we get to this repetitive part of Hades.
Damn it.
So pardon me for just a second. I'm about to
I'm
get
home.
some of the consequences of this game. And I'm going to go talk to
Yes,
everybody.
carry on, everyone. Don't mind me.
Welcome to the House of Hades, where... Wait, I know you. Guess that means you died out there, huh? Well, don't be sad, though. Pretty much everybody dies sometime.
Some of us
I-
more than
Back
others.
already,
Love talking to all of these people.
stupid boy. I told you nobody gets out of here, whether alive or dead. So how was your wanton ransacking of my domain?
I love it. I wantonly ransack everything. And then I died.
Greetings, Father. My ransacking was a delight, thank you for asking. So I'll just be on my way again.
Be on your way indeed. What do I care? You shall never reach the surface. Go, see for yourself.
I will, thank you very much. But first, I'm going to talk to my puppy.
Infernal watchdog Cerberus regards the underworld prince with mixed emotions, from purest joy to deepest melancholy.
You watch over things for me, won't you, boy? You know I'd take you if I could.
Who is
There's
the
a good
best
boy.
boy? Yes, the
dwarf
bestest
has
boy.
enough troubles of his own.
He doesn't. He needs pets. Don't mess with me and my pets.
You've returned.
I have. I'm so sorry. I'm a disappointment.
Good to see you, lad. Despite the circumstances. Remember your training out there. The pain of death is but another obstacle.
And fear is for the weak. Take care, Achilles.
I love to dash. Dash, dash, dash. Dash, dash. Ooh.
How goes it, Shades?
I would do anything for just one glimpse of Aphrodite.
The House of Hades, that dark and lavishly appointed lair of the underworld's king, is home not just to him, but to his willful progeny.
Actually,
I can hear you, old man.
let's talk about this. This person said, I will do anything for a glimpse of Aphrodite. Doing anything is an operant, right? A behavior that would increase in frequency for the consequence, right? The consequence of getting to see Aphrodite. That's operant conditioning right there.
You have come home.
I have.
Do not despair, child. Such setbacks are inevitable and may be overcome with effort and with time. You made contact with the goddess Athena. She shall be true to her word.
I believe it, Nyx. I'm grateful that you put us into contact. I know you took a considerable risk in reaching out.
The risk is not to me. I expected the Olympians would involve themselves in this eventually. Reveal to them no more than they already know. Are we understood?
Yes.
Aye, aye, Captain.
We are.
Then go.
Can't get out here. Can't go anywhere but my room.
Hey, room. I'm back.
The bedchambers of Prince Zagreus lie in a perpetual state of utter disarray, despite his lord and master of the house repeatedly insisting that he pick everything up.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad, is it?
It actually isn't. Like, if this is utter disarray, well, it's a good thing I don't have a camera on my bedroom.
Night and darkness guide me.
So let's see. Bonus attack or... yeah, I definitely need the HP. That is what I
Looking
need.
good.
I most definitely need healing because I am simply not good at not dying.
Okay.
And I have
I
one
can escape through
key.
that pink window there.
I don't really want to unlock this weapon. I don't like it. And so I'm not going to. That's a benefit of having seen this game. And look at all of these places I'm going to need to go.
I can do this. First get past the wretched shades of Tartarus. Easier said than done. And doubtless I'll be running into Meg. The River of Flame ought to be just beyond. Find a way up to Elysium from there, and after that... Alright, let's give it another shot.
And so what's cool about here is that it shows you in the bottom left-hand corner the farthest chamber that you've reached. So you can compare yourself to yourself and see how well you're doing. That's going to become important within our discussion in just a little bit. But first, I'm going to go back out and get started again.
One more time.
It's going to be more than one more time, Zagreus.
Thunder. Is this really him? Okay. In the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message.
Greetings there, young man. Look, your father's always been rather difficult, and he's not so much as called in quite some time. You'll have a better home where you belong, here on Olympus. And to help you on your journey, have my blessing.
Thank you very much. Let's take the epic one.
Lord
Lightning
Uncle Zeus
dash.
lending his support. Never thought I'd see the day. Or night. Whatever.
That's right. So, okay, good. Keys, because I want to unlock a different weapon. And not the bow, because I'm not really into that. And so, if you understand the basic principles of what I was saying before, about pleasant consequences lead to an increase in frequency of behavior. So seeing Aphrodite as something pleasant, so I'm more likely to engage in a behavior if it means that I'm going to get to be able to see Aphrodite. Unpleasant consequences lead to a decrease in frequency of behavior, so dying should ultimately lead me to decrease the frequency of a given behavior. This way. Then you understand the basic principles of operant conditioning. And actually, when I'm teaching my classes, my intro psych classes, students tend to generally understand the basic principles of operant conditioning. What's difficult are some of the more advanced principles of operant conditioning and the language of operant conditioning. And so I want to present that here and give a more advanced sense of what operant conditioning is really all about.
Power of the gods.
Yes. So first, we have to analyze the types of consequences that exist. And when we classify consequences, we classify them with two separate features of those consequences that make up the types of consequences. First, we decide if the consequence is a reinforcement or a punishment. Now, we have a general sense of what punishment is. That word is used in the same sort of way that we would use the word punishment in our everyday language, right? That's an aversive consequence. That's the thing we don't want to have happen.
What do we have here?
We have keys. So, punishment is punishment regardless of context here. And then we have reinforcement. Reinforcement is some sort of pleasurable consequence. Now, I don't use the term reward here, and I'm not using the term reward here intentionally, because when we think of reward, we think of giving somebody a tangible thing. And that's actually a specific type of reinforcement, because of the second feature that we're going to talk about in just a second.
Did you happen to know, my king, that you have slain more than 100 foes since you began your quest? You have, for I am keeping count, and I am most impressed.
I am glad you're keeping count. I love you. Let's get my attack to inflict doom. That sounds lovely.
The war is on.
Can I heal here?
Let's see what's in here.
I do not have enough money for that. Then let's keep going. That is the only thing that is valuable to me. At this point in the game, healing is my most valuable anything. Anything that makes me less likely to die.
Each exit has its own reward.
Eeny, meeny, miny. I don't have enough money for Charon. Let's go over here. So, first you determine, is this reinforcement or punishment? And so how do we determine, is something reinforcement or punishment? Well, you have to figure out, is it a pleasurable or a not pleasurable consequence? And a lot of people think, okay, this is really obvious. But the problem is that some things that we think might be pleasurable consequences actually turn out to be not pleasurable consequences and vice versa. So sometimes you're accidentally reinforcing a behavior that you don't want to, or you're accidentally punishing a behavior when you intend to reinforce it. So let me explain that after we talk to this goddess.
It must be a mess. Let's see here. Hi there. In the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this message.
Why, hello, hello there, little godling. I have to say, you're quite the specimen, and so I've decided I shall aid you for the moment. You interested?
Why, of course I am, my darling. Let's resist some damage.
Interested? In the power to break hearts? Sure, I don't see why not.
Exactly. All this lightning flashing around and I can't see what's going on. Alright. I temporarily lost what I was saying. Give me just a moment. I was saying, yes. Sometimes we can accidentally reinforce things, or accidentally punish things. So maybe you've heard...
Stop him, Riches, now!
So maybe you've heard of the idea before, right? That sometimes when a child misbehaves, what they're actually doing is looking for attention. And that if they cannot get positive attention, then they'll just go for any type of attention imaginable. Even if that attention is negative attention, even if that means that they're going to get yelled at. And so sometimes what you do when a child is misbehaving is you start giving them more frequent positive attention. And that will help avoid the misbehavior by preventing the need for the misbehavior in the first place. And that by yelling at the child who's misbehaving, what you're actually doing is reinforcing the misbehavior. Because you're actually giving them what they were looking for to begin with, which is the attention.
Peace and quiet.
That is, sometimes you think
no way to patch up.
You're punishing a behavior.
Wretches.
By yelling, when in fact the yelling is giving what the behavior's function was. It is giving what the person, or in this case the child, who is a person, but what the child was looking for in the first place. If you've ever heard of the idea of don't feed the trolls online, because that's what they're looking for, where you're arguing with them, thinking that you're going to decrease the frequency of your the behavior by arguing with them or telling them how wrong they are, or how ashamed they should be for whatever it is that they're doing. But that's what they're going for, right? They're going for that engagement. They're going for those negative comments. That's what that is referring to in terms of not feeding the trolls and not engaging in that behavior. Is that you are accidentally reinforcing a behavior that would...
Where to? Long way from home.
This way. When really you're trying to punish the behavior. So it's important that when you're trying to figure out, is this a reinforcer or a punisher, that you pay attention to not what you intended to do with the behavior, but its actual effects on the behavior if you have access to that information. Sometimes you don't, and so you have to go with, okay, what am I trying to do? Sometimes you're planning on, you're figuring out what am I going to use, or what am I going to do, and then you have to figure out, okay, am I trying to reinforce, am I trying to punish, and therefore you have to guess. But if you have access to what it actually did to a behavior, that's what you'd use to decide, is it a reinforcer or a punisher, is what did it actually do to the frequency of the operant. And remember, the operant is the behavior, the voluntary behavior that is being modified, that is being changed. Pow, pow, pow. So, we have our operant now, the behavior that's being changed, the thing that that is either going up or down in frequency. Then we have our consequence. That is the thing that happens after the operant. Consequences always have to be, they follow the operant. And then we have whether or not that consequence increases the frequency of behavior or decreases the frequency of behavior. I have enough money now, so I'm going to head this way. Give me just a sec, some talking's going to happen.
Charon's shop. Why, good to see you, Charon, mate. Just minding my own business, taking in the sights, and hey, what's that you got? Some sort of wares for sale? And I'll just have a look around.
Beyond the present chamber lies the outermost perimeter of Tartarus, promising terrifying dangers far beyond the Underworld Prince's reckoning.
And I can reckon quite a bit.
I think I'm gonna get more max health.
Here's
Gets
the
me
fee.
a little bit of healing, and let's see if I can do this. I doubt I can.
Well, this is awkward.
Awkward.
Halt, Zagreus. Not one step further.
Come on, Meg. Haven't we had more than enough of each other by now? Besides, don't you have someplace else to be?
Your father sent me. All in all, I'd rather be on your bad side than his. Now you can turn back, like a good little man, or I can send you home the painful way. What'll it be?
I'll have to go with the painful way.
So here's the thing, I am not going to continue my discussion of operant conditioning while doing this. I only have so much executive functioning to go around, and I would like to see if I can beat Meg on my second run through. And trying to talk and manage a discussion of operant conditioning while using the executive function to try to beat Meg, that rapidly switching back and forth between processes is going to make me both worse at talking about operant conditioning and worse at fighting. So I'm not going to do either well. So I'm going to have my executive function focus.
A man after my own heart.
Focus on this fight. And on trying to defeat Meg here. And trying to avoid her attacks. I am going to try not to go silent while I'm fighting her here. But I am going to... I only have one cast, right? Yeah, I do. Okay. And it's... She has that right now. Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely not. I'm already mostly dead. Yeah, this is definitely not going my way. Okay, fine. I'm still not going to continue that discussion of operant conditioning just yet because there's no point, because I won't do a very good job of it. I won't do it justice. And in 12 hit points, I am going to have to stop so that I can get those plot points.
Go home, Zagreus.
Yes, I will go home. But don't worry, I like things at home. There are things that I enjoy doing at home.
Ah, cheers for that, Meg.
Oh,
Hello! How are you, my man?
oh, wow, so Megara herself got you last time.
I know
That
you-
must have been intense. She's fast and strong and beautiful. And, anyway, I hope the fates are nicer to you next time.
Yeah, I hope so too. Someone's at the desk next to the throne.
Keep at it, lad. I've known great men throughout my life, and I can always tell when someone's better than their circumstances. Fight like I'd fight out there.
I'll give them hell as you once did, Achilles. Though doubtless many of the shades who stand against me first arrived in Tartarus because of you.
What are you doing?
Who's that sniveling shade to your immediate left there, father? Already found someone new to do the busy work. And here I thought I was utterly indispensable.
That shade boy is my newly designated contractor. One whose responsibility is to work on this house. Though who shall pay for everything my subjects here demand, I do not know.
You're trying to guilt me into funding the exorbitant furnishings you desire.
Perhaps once we are finished with repairs for all the carnage you have sown throughout my realm, then we might finally have time for all the needed renovations that have piled up.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Nice.
Who's
How you
a good
holding
boy?
up, boy? Eating well lately? All three mouths full and happy?
Each terrifying maw of the infernal watchdog Cerberus responds affirmatively, one after the next, as if to reassure the ever-doubting prince.
If I don't pet your other heads, don't bite my arm off. Deal?
I grow nauseous merely listening to this.
You could be nauseous all you want. I love my puppy.
Some sort of special offer for me, my good shade.
Yes, I need this.
Work authorized. A fountain chamber in the depths of Tartarus sounds like an excellent idea.
I don't think I have anything else, do I? No. None at all. That's fine.
What once was a small lounging area within the House of Hades now is sealed off, in utter shambles since the multi-headed Cerberus tore the space apart, mourning the missing prince.
Cerberus destroyed the lounge again. Nyx isn't around.
Sorry about that.
I can get stronger.
Yes. This is important. Now I can
Power
defy
of
death.
darkness.
I have one additional life.
I should go.
And I can get this. Ooh. Now, let's get this.
There we go. Aegis, shield of chaos. Lend me your power.
Wanna try
What
that thing out? Nice place you got here, boyo. Name's Skelly, how's it going? But enough with the small talk already. I'm here to do a job. So let me have it. Give me everything you got.
I don't remember having you on payroll, mate. Who's your supervisor?
Oh, I'm not about to wrap my sources, pal. Just try and beat it out of me.
If you insist.
Yeah, boyo.
Whoops.
Whoopsie daisy.
Bet I got you pretty good.
Alright. Here we go again.
That looks like a Daedalus hammer. Enchantments for my weapon.
Special. Yeah, this one.
Daedalus, wherever you may be right now. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes, break it all. Break it all down.
Composed of such innumerable, ever-shifting, interlocking chambers, the underworld of Lord Hades all but guarantees the dead shall there remain until the end of time.
Good thing I'm not dead.
Alright. So, first thing, I said there were two basic features to a consequence. The first feature was whether or not that consequence was a reinforcer or a punisher. The other thing is whether or not that consequence is positive or negative.
Keep me going for a bit.
Now, this one is probably the most confusing both to students and to just anyone learning about operant conditioning. Because when we say a positive consequence or a negative consequence in our general language, what we mean is a pleasant or an unpleasant consequence, right? We want positive consequences.
Time to collect.
We don't want negative consequences if we're just using our day-to-day language. That is not what it means here. We can't use positive and negative in that way. A positive consequence is more like math. A positive consequence is when you add something that wasn't there before. A negative consequence is when you take something away that was already there. So, nowadays, right, one of the most common consequences that children face is you take away their electronics, you take away their cell phone. That is a negative consequence. But you can also take away
A bottle of nectar.
other things.
Who should I give this to?
I can give people prezzies. Let's go here. So, one of the things that you might think of as a negative consequence, there's a awful smell somewhere. You do something, it gets rid of the awful smell. You're more likely to do that thing in the future because you want the awful smell to go away. That's a negative consequence. Common time that negative consequences happen is if somebody is being nagged, and you...
That shield of yours called Aegis. Why, in fact, it's mine from long ago, young man. I've no more need of it, of course, but how you found it you shall have to tell me once you're here.
Is my hair sticking up?
Chain lightning attack. Excellent. So, if you're constantly being nagged to... I hate these guys. You're constantly being nagged to take out the garbage, and you say, fine, I'll do it just to shut you up, that's a negative consequence. Or that's a negative consequence. Your child is throwing a tantrum, and so you give in to that tantrum, and therefore you have increased the frequency of whatever behavior it is that you're giving in for, right? Whether the frequency is giving the child a lollipop or letting the child stay up late or whatever it is. You've increased the frequency of that behavior that the child wants to see. And by removing the tantrum. So that's what we mean by negative. It's a pleasurable outcome for you. You got rid of the tantrum. That's what you wanted, was for the tantrum to go away. And the behavior's increasing in frequency.
Power of Olympus.
So, positive consequences. You've added something that wasn't there before. Every time you do something, I give you a reward of some sort.
You lads again, huh?
Negative consequences are I take something away that was there and I remove it from the situation, like taking away electronics or taking away some sort of aversive stimulus, like nagging or throwing a tantrum or something like that. So when you're trying to figure out what do you call operant conditioning, what do you call the consequences of operant conditioning, first you figure out, the best way to do it, or the easiest way to do it, is to first figure out, is this reinforcement or punishment?
Else? In the name of Hades.
Pardon. So you figure out, is this reinforcement or punishment? And then you want to figure out, is this positive or negative? And what that ends up giving you is 4 separate types of operant conditioning. You have positive reinforcement, you have negative reinforcement, you have positive punishment, you have negative punishment. And a lot of students that I have try to memorize the definition of those 4 things separately, as 4 separate key terms. That's a mistake. By understanding the things that build up those definitions, it is a much simpler way of understanding operant conditioning. So that's an important thing. If you're someone who's trying to learn about operant conditioning and to understand it in context, is rather than trying to memorize as 4 separate concepts, by simply understanding what builds the concepts, figure out what the operant is. Always figure out what the operant is. Here's why. If you think about the behavior that I was discussing before, so I talked about a behavior of a child throwing a tantrum. So if my child is throwing a tantrum, and so I give them what they want. So, for example, my child may want a cookie, and so they throw a tantrum because they want the cookie, and I give in and give them the cookie. If we identify as the operant my child throwing a tantrum, then a positive consequence has happened. I have added a cookie, and it is a positive reinforcer. I'm going to increase the frequency of tantrum throwing because I have added a cookie into the situation.
You lived through all of that.
Yes, I did.
That's that.
So sad for you that I lived through all of that.
They must have lots of these upon Olympus.
So if we identify the operant as the tantrum, then we have had a positive consequence. We've added the cookie. If, on the other hand, we identify, as I did when I gave the example, if the operant that we identify is my behavior of giving a cookie, it's still been reinforced because it's still increased in frequency.
Gemstones.
But it has been negatively reinforced because we have removed the tantrum, the aversive stimulus. So we have subtracted. So it's important that you identify your operant so that you can figure out what happened as a consequence of that operant, right? You just have to figure out what are the things that happened relative to that behavior and to that person, right? And so it's very important that that's your first step. lot of students forget to identify their operant, and that's sort of a question where you have multiple people and therefore multiple potential behaviors would be a very difficult type of question because there are multiple potential answers depending on which perspective you're taking.
Now what?
Now we're gonna go this way, that's what.
Kieran's shop.
Pardon me? Do I want to give a present to you? No.
Hey, good to see you out here, mate. Looks as though you've got some fine wares up for sale, don't you?
Alright, so we're not going to assume that I'm going to make it through this. So we're going to go... Actually, oh, we can do this.
Should come in useful.
There we go. Alright, let's see if we can make it through this. Same rules apply. I'm going to be a little quiet.
Hello, Meg.
Ever stubborn, aren't you? Maybe my whip might make you reconsider whatever it is that you're attempting here.
Your whip's not been all that persuasive in the past.
This is actually a really great example.
Maybe persistence will pay off for both of us. Come then.
So if her whip hasn't made me decrease the frequency of my behavior in the past, it's a distinct possibility that her whip isn't an aversive consequence for me, and therefore will not decrease the frequency of behavior because it's not a punisher. And that may explain why it's not stopping me from doing the behavior, the operant, right, of trying to escape, because it's not a punisher. She wants it to be a punisher, but her intention, whether she intends it to be a punisher or not, is not what decides whether or not it's a punisher. It's the effect on the frequency of behavior. And if it has no effect on the frequency of behavior, then it's nothing, right? Then it is just neutral. If it increases the frequency of behavior, then it's a reinforcer. And that is possible, right? If that's something that he enjoys, then her whip's a reinforcer, and it's not going to stop me from running away, because that's a thing that I enjoy. Maybe I enjoy seeing her, and I enjoy seeing her more than I care about the negative consequence of her whip. And so it's not going to stop me from engaging in the behavior of trying to get away because I like seeing her, and I get to see her each time that I'm here. Ah! I gotta stop talking now. I told you guys that I wasn't going to talk, and then I started talking. Defied! I had this!
That's what you get.
Hide. Did I do it? I did it! Woohoo! Third run through. That's awesome.
Yes.
There's gonna be a little bit of talking, so...
Blood. Achilles might know what to do with this. What I wouldn't give for, say, a healing flask of some sort.
Yeah. Or this?
How did you...
I needed one of those.
We're just gonna do this.
Don't think I've gone this far. Got it. Now we're getting somewhere.
The once verdant plains of Asphodel are now engulfed in scintillating flame, having been flooded by the river Phlegethon, whose hideously superheated contents could bring death swiftly even to those resistant to most heat.
I'm only flame resistant, not flame proof.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, don't walk in the river. Alright. So again, we don't want to try to memorize each of these as 4 separate terms. Far better to understand the concepts behind them of positive and negative reinforcement and punishment, and how they influence the frequency of behavior. So why then am I talking about that in the context of Hades? Well, if we think about what happens in a roguelike game like this game, where we have repeatedly going through going through combats, going through the same areas over and over again, and then getting persistent power-ups, right? So we're definitely talking about roguelites here with those persistent power-ups. And specifically, so let's talk about roguelites first in general, and then we'll talk about why Hades in particular was especially popular in the genre. Ugh. Got 2 of these now. Excellent. And why I think this was specifically popular within the genre. Let's go this way. If I have any chance of surviving, it's through hearts. So what happens is we have this system where crushers, plural. There we go. Is that we go through and we engage in combats, and at the end of those combats, right, when we finish up what we're doing, we then get to our hub world, and at the hub world, we are granted some power-ups. That's our reinforcement, right? We get the reinforcement, and we're reinforced for finishing each of these rooms as well. So at the end of each room, we get some sort of power-up. That is, that's our consequence. Our operant is finishing up the room. It's fighting the bad guys. So why do we fight the bad guys? Because when we finish up the room, when we get through here, we get 2 sorts of consequences. 1, we get to go on to the next room. Consequence number 1, we get to move on to the next room. Consequence number 2, we get some sort of power-up. I don't have a lot of money. And we get to select which type of power-up we want. What we're doing is selecting which power-up we think is going to be the most pleasurable, that is going to be the most likely to lead us to positive consequences. And sometimes we have to pick the one, we don't want any of the consequences, and we have to pick the one that's going to be the least aversive. But oftentimes, most of the time, we're picking the one that's going to be the most pleasurable. Then, what happens is, eventually, we die. There are some people who can get through an entire game in a single run, and they never have to go through and die. Typically, however, they've practiced a whole bunch of times. They've done a whole bunch of dying in order to get there, and then resetting the game so that they can get good enough to get through in a single run. So they've still done a whole bunch of dying. They're just foregoing the power-ups that you tend to get while dying. But for the most part, what happens is you die, and then you get the consequence of getting power-ups that persist over time. So let's think about that. Give me just a second.
Just what I need, except
we can't have it. No. So let's think about that. So first our operant was finishing out a room. And with the operant of finishing out a room, you have the consequence of getting to move on to the next room.
Why, it's the barge of death.
Yay! You have added something, the next room, that wasn't there before, so it's positive. And thereby increased the frequency of the operant finishing out the rooms. So we have positive reinforcement. There's going to be a lot of positive reinforcement in this game. Ow! So we've got a lot of positive reinforcement going on. You've added something the next room, thereby increasing the frequency. Then, we have, after we finish a run, what they have to get you to do, right, to be a successful roguelike or roguelite, they have to get you to do another run, right? They've got to get it to be the sort of game where you want to do, okay, just one more run, okay, just one more run, and then you want to keep doing runs, right? That's what makes a roguelike or a roguelike really successful, is that you keep wanting to, do those runs over and over again. So then you have to have something. Pardon me for just a sec again, she's going to talk.
The one called Nyx. She is your mother, as I understand? We Olympians rarely consort with the chthonic gods, though Nyx herself reached out to me about your plight, and I was spurred to act.
Divine protection.
So then what happens is, how do they get you to want to do another run? Well, first, at the end of a run, you get a reinforcer that persists over time. You have multiple ways that this happens. First, you have your mirror. Your mirror operates by principles of negative reinforcement. By giving you powers that make it less likely that you're going to die, they have taken away an aversive consequence. Death in this game is an aversive consequence. And they've removed the likelihood, or at least make it less likely. They've removed the frequency of death. They've decreased death in frequency, that is, they've subtracted death, thereby increasing the frequency of engaging in runs and engaging in the desired behavior, playing the game. Right. From the developer's perspective, the desired behavior is playing the game, doing runs, continuing the game, spending time engaging with the game. That's the behavior that they're interested in. Yes, they want you to have fun, but they want you to have fun because they want you to play their game, and to maybe play more of their games later, other games.
Coin from the dead.
Money. So, by giving you those giving you those power-ups, what they're really doing is removing that negative consequence of death. So, negative reinforcement. They're increasing the frequency of going on runs by removing the likelihood of death. That's the function of those power-ups. The power-ups are not valuable in and of themselves. They're only valuable because they are removing the likelihood of death. But what they've also done that is really genius, right? So that's really great for the type of player who wants to be successful at a game like this, right? And that's how the average roguelike game works, is that they, a roguelite game works, right? Is that they give you these persistent power-ups which make you more likely to be successful in the game, that allow you to have more runs, that'll make you less likely to die overall, and make you want to continue to play the game. But what this game has done as well, that I think has really contributed to its appeal, and really, I would not be playing this game, I would not have played this game as much as I had if they hadn't done this, is what they've also done that provides reinforcement for additional runs. And that's what I'm going to point out here. So I've just finished a run. And what do I get to do now? Now what I get to do is I get to talk to characters. Hi there.
Must have had a run-in with a spreader, huh? They're much more talented than the low-grade witches down in Tartarus, so your dad lets them stay warm up in Asphodel, I guess.
I guess.
And I get to see all of these plot points.
Olympus knows of him, bestowing on him all their worthless blessings here within my realm. Our realm. Explain to me how exactly this is possible, Nix. Either your limitless power has considerably waned, or you are up to something.
Do not question my power, Hades. Your son was bound to be discovered the closer he came to the surface. The Olympians are pleased to know they have a distant relative, and bid him welcome to their mountain. That is all. Their influence is very limited.
Blood and darkness. Do not speak to me about their influence. I've seen their influence firsthand. You've made a foolish mistake.
You would speak to me of foolish mistakes. You cannot change the course that has been set. Try all you like.
Nix.
Guess what, boy? Made it all the way to Asphodel last time. I fully understand how come you never liked it there. Now to trek on back, I guess. Take care.
Despite the Underworld Prince's optimism, his old companion Cerberus, the multi-headed hound, maintains a somewhat sulky attitude for now.
Here, boy. Just as long as one of your three heads enjoys these pets.
And we are reinforced for petting the dog. Right? So we get to see story points. And just as different type of people, I talked about how for Zagreus, the whip may actually be a reinforcer instead of a punisher. There are other types of people for whom the the joy of simply having bested oneself, having done better than you did last time, and simply having achieved in a roguelike game, that would be reinforcement to keep you going and to do the next run and to do the next run to see if you can do better and better and better, right? Seeing those numbers go up, add achievement, and thereby increase the frequency of behavior going on a run. For others, these plot points are what's being added in. The furtherance of this plot is being what's added in and increases the frequency of going on a run. And for those who don't, who that isn't motivation, you can skip the plot points.
Wait, you're giving me your codex? I can't accept something like this.
Now, I happen to like the plot points, but you can skip through them. And so it gives people the choice, who don't like it, to skip it, but who do, to gain all of these bits of story element that you can then go through. And so it appeals to a wide range of individuals. And then you have the house contractors. And what the house contractors have done is added another element of that. You have work orders that you can put through, and some of them are functional. These ones are going to allow you to do better and to achieve more, and to get those numbers to keep going up. And when I say those numbers to keep going up, remember, when we came over here, I'll come back out here and do the plot points in just a second, and then we're going to be done. But when I say those numbers to keep going up, remember that when we came and looked out over here, as we looked out, we eventually got to a point where it told us what our farthest chamber reached was. So for those who, what they want most is to continue to, what's most pleasurable for them is to do better than they did last time. They can look at this and say, okay, the last time I looked at this, I was at 9. Now I am at 23, right? So I've added something that wasn't there before. I've added additional chambers. And that's going to increase the frequency of my behaviors. I'm going to be more likely to play so that I can both up in skill, but also so that I can get the things that I need to get in order to increase the power of my character. Right? So that I can go in and, for example...
Hey, Skelly, you look like you know your way around Tartarus.
Talk to this guy?
Found some of this ancient Titan blood out there, and I was looking to score some more.
Ah, you come to the right place regarding that there, pal. It's your mean weapons back there that can find this stuff. Once you get all the way through Tartarus with one, that's all the blood you're gonna get. For the time being, anyhow.
How am I supposed to keep track of which weapons I've earned these with, then?
I don't know. There's always the invention of writing stuff down. You'll figure something out.
And...
For you, mate. Thought you might get a kick out of this.
For me, pal? Awful nice of you. Just awful nice. But guess what? I got this for you. Tit for tat, you understand? A deal's the deal.
Cheers, mate.
So, I've given him a gift. He's given me something in return. The operant in this situation is the giving of that nectar. It's going to increase in frequency because a pleasurable consequence has occurred following it. So something has been added that wasn't there before, the gift that he gave me in return. It's going to increase in frequency. We have positive reinforcement of engaging in that behavior.
Got something new to try.
And now it shows me that this is a useful tool. So I can play the game so that I can power up. If I'm the sort of person who wants those numbers to go up, I get the resources that I need in order to see these numbers go up. These numbers going up makes me more likely to be able to get from 23 to higher and higher and higher numbers. In order to get these resources, I have to go on runs. So if I want to be able to power up my character, I have to go on runs. The more runs I go on, the better I get, the more those numbers go up, and it's a self-repeating cycle. But also, if I want to get additional plot points with these characters, I can't advance the plot without going on additional runs. And they've done that with these work orders too. They've given me the ability to either use this resource on the sorts of things, the sorts of of outcomes that will allow me to get further and further on my runs, if that's what's reinforcing to me. Because remember, each individual is going to have something different that is their optimal pleasurable outcome. For some people, the thing that is most pleasurable to them is achievement in the game. It's getting further and further, winning, having that number 23 go up to a 26 and a 50 and a 100, and beating the big boss. And for them, going through these work orders and being able to switch their keepsakes regionally, being able to have infernal troves and fountains, these are going to be the most valuable to them. For others, the plot points and the fun that they have at this hub world, that's going to be what's most valuable to them, just having fun here. And for them, they're going to be able to change the colors within the Great Hall. They're going to be able to use this resource to eventually unlock music and the different songs within the game. And that too, how do you get this resource? You go on additional runs. So when you take the operant, right, the ultimate operant for someone who is developing this game is they want the player to go on additional runs, to want to continue going on runs. And so what have they done? They've created a situation where that operant is reinforced. Remember, you want that to increase in frequency, so reinforcement should be what exists here. And it's reinforced in multiple ways. It's negatively reinforced because you will remove the frequency of death when you add in those power-ups, thereby increasing the frequency of getting further and further. That's the achievement orientation. Increase the frequency of moving further and further, so positively reinforcing those who have an achievement orientation, but also increasing the frequency of getting story elements if individuals are motivated by story elements, or increase the frequency of self-expression and artistry for those who are reinforced by self-expression and artistry. So they've actually captured a large audience of people who are all reinforced by a lot of different things, who have a lot of different reasons, different motivations for why they approach a video game. And all of those various gaming motivations are reinforced within this game, and they are all leveraged to reinforce, to increase the frequency of one operant going through runs in this game. And you don't have to be exceptionally good at the game in order to get those reinforcers, because of that self-perpetuating cycle of having every time you go through, you increase in power, and because they've also added in important settings. So what they've done is they've also said, listen, for those type of people who aren't achievement oriented, for those type of people who don't really care about being exceptionally good at the game, who are more motivated by advancing the plot points, or who are more motivated by changing the aesthetics of the Great Hall, and who are more motivated by this hub world than they are by the get good type phenomenon, right? And I'm using that both the way that the gaming community, right, but also in a purely honest way. Some people are motivated by getting good at something, by taking a skill, and playing a game like this is a skill, and establishing their ability to do that, taking that skill and getting better and better at it, and achieving with that skill. And they feel good by being able to say, there was a difficult thing and I accomplished it. And they've created a mode that says, if that's not you, right? If that is you, go for it. But if that's not you, you can turn God mode on. And God mode says, go in and try it, but every time you die, you get tougher. That's not a big deal. So you want to focus on the story, you want to focus on customizing your hub world, fine. The operant is still go on runs, right? You need that to get your resources so you can do the things you want to do, and you need that to advance the plot. You need that so that the plot points can regenerate, so you have more conversations with the individuals who are at the hub world. But if you don't want to have to be good at that sort of game, or maybe you can't. My 6-year-old plays this game, and he will play this game in God mode because he's not going to be as good at this game as my husband and I, who have been gamers for a lifetime, are going to be. And that's okay. He can still get the enjoyment out of this game and out of the various elements of this game because they've added that in. And therefore, they've made those reinforcers equally as powerful for all different types of gamers. And I think that that's exceptionally good as an accessibility resource as well. I actually really like even more granular accessibility settings, like those that you see in Celeste, where you can control various aspects of accessibility and change various aspects of the game. I know that that takes a lot of programming to do, however, and a lot of additional work, but I really like the move towards that level of accessibility because it allows you to control the reinforcers within the game and control your ability to achieve those reinforcers so that you can achieve those reinforcers and thereby increase the frequency of operants. It is in the best interest of developers to look at what are my operants, what are the behaviors that I'm trying to increase in frequency, and how can I take the pool of people who are able to achieve those operants and expand it in some way. And that's what they've really done with Hades, is expanded the pool of people who can be reinforced or who are reinforced for engaging in those operants by having so many elements that reinforce those operants, in both positive reinforcement, adding things that weren't there before, and negative reinforcement, taking away the elements of the game that are inherently aversive. But not building in things like excessive grind, where you have to go through a million times in a grindy game in order to continuously get better. Because you could say, listen, my 6-year-old just needs to go through hundreds of times and gain small amounts of darkness and small amounts of keys until he has built up the Mirror of the Night. Right? You can do that in very teeny tiny dribs and drabs and spend forever doing that to get tough enough for even my 6-year-old to win this game, right? If I give him my version of the game where I have maxed out the Mirror of Darkness, he's much better at the game. But why should he have to engage in that sort of unfun grind when you can just build in a God mode that does that automatically for you, right? And makes it more accessible to have that reinforcement. And that's really what they've done here, is they've used those principles of operant conditioning to make accessible both negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement without intentionally building things in that ruin the fun, right? Death is an inherent part of this game that is an aversive consequence, but that is a necessary aversive consequence in a game like this. That you can then use and leverage as part of the reinforcement structure of this game. And so that's how we take operant conditioning, a basic principle of Psychology 101, and relate it to our understanding of Hades the game, and of our understanding of roguelites in general, and of Hades in particular.
The prodigal son returns.
And what I'm doing now, I want to make sure that I have...
Don't worry, Meg.
A good
I've
shot
actually
of...
managed to get home the painful way after all.
A good shot of Zagreus. I'm sure that I have a good shot of Zagreus in the video. But I'm going to stop here. As always, if you have any game requests that you want, you can always leave them in the comments, or you can put them over in the discussion on YouTube. And if you are interested in seeing more about psychology in video games, you can follow me here on YouTube. You know that already. But you can also find me over on Twitch. And I stream on an inconsistent schedule. Not going to lie, I stream when I am available because I have Baby Bear and Babyer Bear, and I also teach. So this is what I do, and I would like to do some more of it with you guys. So if you're interested, feel free to join us, and we will catch you in the next video.